From Bossier City, Louisiana, this is the Grouch and the Brainstorm. And welcome back. My name's Mike, and I'm here with Matt. Say hi, Matt.
Hey, guys.
And today we have a special guest, another bonus episode, which we love bonus episodes. So I'm going to turn it over to Matt, and Matt is going to introduce our guest for today. And go on, Matt. Head with it.
So this one's pretty special for me because today I get to interview my sponsor, and it's Bobby E. And I'm going to let him kind of just start off with the basics, and we sort of jump in and bug him a little bit as we go along. So if he wants to introduce himself and kind of take it from there.
Well, I appreciate that. My name is Bobby, of course, and I'm a little leery of being introduced as special. You know, there's good special and there's not so good special, so that's kind of strange. But I know we're here to, talk about alcoholism and what got us to the rooms of AA. But, it's a long story. I'm going to try to keep it short as I can. But growing up, I pretty much did not drink, not to say that, on occasion I didn't have beer with the guys, or in college I didn't go and get a drink, but I didn't drink for the most part. Even in my adult life, I would go to some cocktail parties. I may have one glass of wine, maybe two. Only did that about 3 or 4 times a year. Somewhere at the age of about 45 years old, I'm 62 now, things changed. Really can't lay my finger on exactly what changed. I've always had them in my mind that kind of my kids were reaching adulthood, and I thought, it's time for me to. I've been the son, I've been the businessman, I've been the father, I've been the husband. It's time for me to enjoy life and have fun. So I started drinking a little more. I started out with frozen margaritas from a place not far down from my house, and I would stop in. I would get the largest one they had. I don't even remember what size it was, and I would go home and I'd drink about 1/3 of it, and then I'd put the rest of it in the freezer, and then the next day I would drink about 1/3 of it, put it in the freezer the next day. And that went on for a while until 1/3 became 1/2, and then 1/2 became the whole drink in a night. And started getting away from that and saying I need a little bit more than just a margarita. And I started buying vodka and drinking it at the house. I did most of my drinking at the house, and then just kind of went from there. Had a pause in 2010. I was 49 years old. I got deployed to Iraq. And when you're deployed in a Muslim country, you're not allowed to drink for the most part. And so I was away from alcohol. They didn't have alcohol. You couldn't buy alcohol. I was away from it for a year. It didn't bother me. It wasn't an issue. And I came back home from that deployment in December of 2010. And for whatever reason, when I came back home, I didn't fit back in like I had left.
Had a hard time integrating back into society.
People had been doing my job. My wife had been raising my kids. Somebody else had been doing the yard work. And not that they didn't want to give those things up. It just, I wasn't sure how to take them back, I guess, if you will. And as a result of that, I started drinking more. And got a divorce in 2012, bought a house and was kind of on my own, and I think that's when it really progressed. I started buying Jack Daniels by the half gallon, and I was one of those guys, I didn't want to ever run out. So when I went to buy Jack Daniels, I always bought 2 half gallons. I may have 2 in the hole, but I want to make sure that I didn't run out. So and I was drinking every night. It got to be about 1/3 Jack and the rest Sprite, and it ended up where I was drinking mostly Jack Daniels with just a splash of Sprite in it. And people would ask me, well, how much did you have drink last night? I'd say, well, just one. Well, it was a 32-ounce one, and I started having blackouts, would not remember going to bed, and wake up the next morning. Normally didn't feel too bad when I woke up, and would start my day and go from there. And, things progressed, and I started slipping home at lunch and, getting a drink to take the edge off.
Yeah.
And I would say I'm not going to drink before 8 o'clock at night,
Yeah.
and then that back up to 7, and then that would back up to 6, and things like that. So it was a progressive thing. And kind of my pinnacle of everything was in 2015. I had a conference, and just so happened the conference was in my hometown. And so I had told my wife on this particular one day was kind of a light meeting day, and it was a lot of vendor stuff. And then the vendor, if you did business with them, took you out to dinner later that night. And I told her, I said, I'm gonna drink pretty heavily during the day, so tonight you're gonna be the driver. And that plan went well. I started in the morning with several Bloody Marys. I went home, I cut the grass, I had a drink while I was cutting the grass. I went back to my current wife's parents' house to pick her up, had a drink on the way back there. She got there, we got ready and climbed in the truck. She was driving, I was in the passenger seat, and we went to a nice steakhouse where the event was going to be. Went in, I was pretty well toasted at that point in time, drank wine while I was there, and just for me, a combination of whiskey and wine was always a blackout, never failed. The last thing I remember was climbing into the passenger seat of the vehicle to go home, and the next thing I remember was brake lights on a vehicle in front of us coming on, brakes squealing and hitting the vehicle in front of us, and it kind of jarred me out of my blackout. And when I jarred out of my blackout, I'm sitting behind the steering wheel of the truck, and my wife is nowhere in the vehicle. So apparently we'd gotten back to her parents' house, and she was going to drive, and I said, no, I'm capable of driving, and she was not willing to stand up to me at that moment in time, and shouldn't have been. And I climbed in the truck and headed on down the road and had a fender bender. And when you have a fender bender and you're highly intoxicated, the police always come, and it always ends up not so good. So I got arrested that night and carried off and bailed out. Had to go back to the conference the next morning. By that time, most people there knew what had happened, and had to face the embarrassment and all that. But I didn't learn my lesson. I kept drinking pretty heavily. Had to have the machine in my vehicle to crank it.
Toxilock.
Yeah. And I'd go and drink pretty heavily and have to wait until my blood alcohol level got low enough that I could blow in it and go. And I remember one particular time, and it was another pinnacle of my deal. We had gone to Lafayette or Baton Rouge it was, for a meeting my wife had, and kind of the same thing. I drank a lot during the day. We had a dinner event that night. I mixed wine. When we got back to the hotel, she said she was going to visit with some of her friends. I said, I'm going to go back to the room and watch TV. I went back, had a pretty good drink, blacked out, fell asleep. Don't remember her coming in. And somewhere in the middle of the night, I had to get up and go to the restroom. And as I entered into the restroom, I tripped and fell. And if I would have had a sledgehammer, I could not have destroyed the toilet any more than I did. So I
Cracked the porcelain?
I cracked it all.
Oh,
cracked
nice.
the porcelain, the bowl, everything.
Your head?
And, with my head, my chest, and my wife is standing over me, and I'm like a fish on a wet floor, floundering, trying to get up. And somewhere in that moment in time, I blacked out again. And so I really don't remember what happened, but somewhere between that moment and the next morning, my wife got the water cut off, got our room changed, and moved us to a different room in the hotel. She said that she had to put me on a luggage cart to get me down to the next room, and I was doing a beauty pageant wave as I was going down the hall.
I can only picture that.
Yeah.
Always
and,
a smart-ass alcoholic.
and what's funny is it was a room on the opposite side of the hall, so obviously the bed was in a different position. So I woke up the next morning, I knew something was strange, but I wasn't quite sure what it was. And she and I laughed it off. I know now that she was laughing on the outside but wasn't laughing on the inside, and kind of thing. And my liver levels kept getting worse and worse, and at one point I had a liver biopsy. And
is that painful?
Yeah, yes and no. They numb it, but it's not terribly painful. If you look at the needle, it's gonna be painful.
About the size of a pencil.
Yeah, it's big.
I've been threatened with one.
Yeah, it's big and it's long and it's scary. But they did the biopsy, and a week or two later, I get a letter in the mail from the doctor that did it, and I don't remember how many things it had on it, but it had about 10 things on it that I needed to do because my liver was fatty and starting cirrhosis and things like that. And number one thing on that list was stop drinking, and under that may have been like eat better diet, exercise more, get more sun or something like that. And I was like, well, they really don't mean number one, so I'll do number 2, 3, 4, 5.
If I do the others,
yeah,
number one,
more sun.
Yeah,
so.
but if I do the other 8, then I do 8 out of 9, I should be good. I think that moment kind of put a fear into my wife, that she realized, that it was more serious, and that serious that it could lead to death at some point if something wasn't done. So it was April the 9th of 2017. It was a Sunday afternoon, and we'd got up and we'd gone to church, gone to a Mexican restaurant that we normally go to, and I'd had a margarita just like we do every time. We came back home, and I'd fixed myself a glass of water, believe it or not, no alcohol. Sat down in my chair to watch the Masters. The Masters was coming on, and I was about 20 minutes into it. My brother walked around the corner into the living room, and my mind is thinking, what is my brother doing here? He doesn't just normally stop in and visit. He lives in a different town, pretty good ways from me. But anyway, behind him was another guy I didn't recognize, and then behind them was 3 or 4 other people that were friends of mine, people that I'd worked with or do work with, and all that. And they sat in the living room and did an intervention. And I remember, well, the guy that I didn't know was the person leading the intervention, and he asked me to listen to what everybody said and not interject anything. And so I told him I would, and they went around the room and said their piece, and they didn't hold anything back. But I remember thinking, like when my wife talked, this is what you need to do, and if you don't do this, I'm going to do this and all that. And I'm thinking in my mind, that's fine. We're going to be divorced in a week anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
I got to one of my employees, and they said their piece, and I'm like, oh, that's fine, but it really doesn't matter because you're going to be fired tomorrow. So, and friend, and I thinking, I'm not going hunting or fishing with you anymore, and that kind of stuff. But when it got to the end, the guy doing the intervention said, we've got a bed for you. Are you willing to go? And I hopped up and said, yes. I don't know why I said yes. I think that I was still processing in my mind, trying to figure out a way out of this thing, to get around it, and all that. And I said, who's taking me? And it was going to be my wife and my brother. And so I started to my bedroom, and they asked me, so where are you going? I said, I'm going in my bedroom to pack some stuff. And they said, oh, no, the car's already packed and ready to go. Now, I had no clue when she packed, how she packed, anything like that. I don't think I asked. We got on the road, started down the highway, and I'm still thinking in my mind, how am I going to get out of this, what am I going to do? And I was being very superficial. Who's winning the Masters? You know.
Well, that would be first thing on my mind.
Yeah, you know, and boy, isn't that a pretty tree right there we just passed? Because I really didn't know what to say or do, and it was about a 2-hour drive.
Headed out east, right?
Headed out east, yeah, the eastern part of the state, and we pull up and they check me in, and you know, they do all the stuff, and my brother and my wife are sitting in the room while they're checking me in, and I can see them whispering to each other, and I can't hear what they're saying, and I didn't find out till later because I was answering all the questions and agreeing to everything and all that, and I asked them, I said, what were y'all talking about? And they said, we had no clue it was going to be this easy. We thought sooner or later you were going to break off and it was going to be game on. And
This is a classic TV intervention.
yes,
Just like something you see on Intervention.
Sure.
that's right. That's right. So obviously I got to the treatment center and, you know, got my stuff moved in. I was in a cabin with 7 other people, you know, didn't know what was going to happen, how it was going to happen. And I just started doing the deal. And, you know, after probably about a month is when the haze kind of cleared a little bit. And I realized, yes, I am alcoholic. I do need help. And I decided at that moment in time, because I thought they tricked me. They told me I was going to only be there 30 days. And I could have left any time I wanted to. And when I told my counselor that, she kind of berated me. What do you know about alcoholism and all that? So when my 30 days got up and obviously insurance ended, the first person I went to was my counselor and said, what do you think I ought to do? And she said, I think you need to stay for a full 90 days.
Yeah.
So I chose to stay for a full 90 days. And the 90 days at that place takes you from step 1 all the way through step 5. Yeah. And that's when you kind of complete everything. And so I did that, came back home, and kind of settled into life. Of course, you know, when you're in a treatment center, you do get passes from time to time. You can go out. One of the criteria is you have to go to AA meetings, get slip signed. I did all that. I came to the Quad Club.
Did y'all do external meetings over in that area?
Oh, yeah. You know, sometimes external, always internal. And sometimes external people came to the internal meetings.
Gotcha.
You know, so it's a little different than we do, you know, at a normal AA meeting. A lot of chanting going on, you know, while they read how it works. And
yeah, kind of like we hear sometimes
yeah,
when
like,
a treatment center.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And so, you know, did the deal, came back home and settled into a life and started, you know, working the steps. The guy I asked to be my sponsor was actually one of those 8 people in the room at my house that day.
During the intervention.
During the intervention. Wow. And I was glad he was there, and I asked him to be my sponsor, and he agreed. He's got probably 28, 29 years today sober, and he and I just started working the steps. He asked me a lot of times to go to meetings that I didn't necessarily want to, you know, long way from my house, but they were step studies or they were big book studies, stuff I wasn't going to get in the normal course of an AA type deal. And, you know, I was glad I did, and it built a bond, and, you know, he's still my sponsor today. So.
Okay. So this guy that is your sponsor, how long have you been sober, Bob?
I've been sober a little over 6 years.
Okay.
6 years on April the 10th.
And he's been your sponsor since day one?
He's been my sponsor since day one.
And he was at your intervention?
And he was at my intervention, yes.
So I guess my biggest question is, has he seen a change in you, Bobby?
He says he has, you know, and you can only take them at their word. You know, he and I don't talk every day. But we talk when we need to talk, and if I'm working with a sponsee and I get in a tough situation where I'm not sure what the answer is, then I'll bounce him off of him, the situation, and we'll go back and forth and kind of figure out a game plan. And, you know, sometimes he has to say, hey, I'm going to have to get back with you because I'm going to have to call my sponsor and see what they think.
So we go back. Were you born here?
I was born in a town right across the river because there were no hospitals here.
Okay.
And
but you're from North Louisiana.
I am from North Louisiana. Been here all my life.
Okay. So there's no external stuff there.
No.
So Obviously we talked a little bit about, the drinking and the progression of drinking and the mixing Sprite with whiskey kind of threw me off just a little bit. What was your relationship like going into recovery, not being sober? Let's just say I haven't even went to the treatment center yet. What was your relationship like with your immediate family, wife and children?
When you're an alcoholic, you think everything is wonderful, and looking back on it now, my kids weren't at the house much. They didn't bring any of their friends to the house because they weren't sure if they showed up, was it going to be the sober Bobby or the drunk Bobby.
Absolutely.
And while at the moment my marriage seemed great and we were doing good things and all that, looking back on it now, it was not as good as I thought it was, and it was putting a big strain on her that she didn't know how to voice or how to do anything about. And so, she reached out to this group of people that agreed to do an intervention. And, that's really unusual because, a lot of people find themselves in the situation, and a spouse or significant other needs help, and they can't find anybody to help them. But she was able to.
So I got a question with I know how mine was as I progressed along, but you talked about the early drinking and then the DUI and the wreck, and then you went to treatment. How long a period of time was that between those two?
It was about a 2-year period.
So, okay, that's my question is, was there anywhere along in your mind that you thought, I got a problem, even if you wouldn't admit it to nobody else, or, was it ever a thought of that, or did you just?
Not really. I don't remember ever thinking that. What's funny, and you talk about the DUI, is, after that happened, I had lots of people that would pat me on the back and say, keep your head up, this too shall pass, or could have been me on any given night, or stuff like that. And when I say 40, 50, 60 people, I'm not exaggerating. It was a lot of people that told me that. I had one person call me and say, hey, I think you got a problem, and would you agree to go to a AA meeting with me? And I agreed to go to an AA meeting, and that person was the person that's my sponsor.
Yeah.
And so I went to an AA meeting and with him and did the deal, and I even spoke at that first AA meeting. I didn't identify as an alcoholic, but I did speak. But once I left that meeting, I was like, okay, I obligated. I'd go to one meeting. I did go to one meeting, and I'm done. So, I did what I committed
Check the
to.
box.
Yeah, I checked the box and out of there.
Kind of
You
get
even
rid of
shared. That's pretty good.
Get rid of those back problems. a
That's
little
right.
bit.
That's right.
we
Do you
all
remember
got
what
'em.
you shared?
I do not, and I don't remember why I shared. I don't remember if they called on me to share or it was like a round table, and when it got to me, I was up, and so I had to say something. I have no clue what I shared.
Well, the thing too that we do this, and we started this bonus thing because so many people's stories are so different, and we're hoping that newer people, just like you're talking about your wife or somebody like that out there that doesn't really know where to get help or is unfamiliar with it, that maybe they can hear one of these and it'll spur them along or help them out. But what I think with you and with everybody that we've talked to so far, so you're my sponsor.
Yes.
You got sober. You do everything in the program that they tell all of us to do.
To the best of my ability.
And you do a pretty good job of it,
Well,
in my humble opinion.
I don't know
But-
about that.
Well, I do.
You got to remember his opinion's humble.
Yeah.
That's right. Always humble.
That's right.
I said earlier, I don't have any character defects that I can think of. So,
I'll
but
give you a list after this.
Me too.
he'll be texting me while we're on there.
That's
No.
right.
But I know that you work with me. You work with a couple other guys that we're all pretty tight. How is that for you as far as you go along? how has that part been for you?
It's been great. I like working with people, and when I first got sober, and I can remember it like it was yesterday. I was a little bit less than a year sober. I was about 11 months sober. I was at AA meeting. My wife was there, and we had the meeting, and there was a guy there that was his very first day at AA, and he obviously he had the jitters. I don't know if he'd been drinking or using that day, but he was pretty wound up, and he was emotional and everything like that. And as we do in AA, we wrote, everybody wrote their numbers on an index card, and I just wrote Bobby E. and my number just like everybody else does. And it was a Saturday, I remember it well. And we went home, and we were laying in bed that night, and I told my wife, I said, that guy is going to call me. And she said, you think? I said, I don't know why I think that, but I think he's going to call me. So we went to bed. The next morning was Sunday morning. We got up, got ready for church. And as I was walking out the door, just as my hand hit the doorknob to step outside, my phone rang, and it was him. And he was in a bad way and asked me if I could come visit with him. And he lived probably 60, 70 miles from where I lived.
Yeah.
And I told my wife, I said, you got to go to church. I got to go deal with this. And so I hopped in the truck and took off and started trying to call people that I go to meetings with, try to find somebody to go with me, because I was new, but I was not new enough to not know I needed to not be alone in this deal. And I couldn't get anybody. Nobody was answering the phone, and all of a sudden this light bulb went off, and I called my sponsor, and I said, hey, I've got this guy that wants me to meet with him, and is there any way that you could meet us? And he said, it just so happens I'm on that side of town, and yeah, I'll meet you there. And it was a nasty, rainy day. I pulled up in the driveway. The guy was sitting on the front porch of this mobile home out in the middle of nowhere, and shaking and smoking and all that. And not long after I got there, my sponsor got there, and we sat there and we talked about AA and the ways he could work the program and things like that. And we kind of got towards the end when it was getting wrapped up, and he turned to me and he said, will you be my sponsor? And of course, I'm shy of a year. I had worked all the steps. So I turned and I looked at my sponsor, and he shook his head, yes. And I said, okay, I'll be your sponsor. Well, it just so happened that the guy was scheduled to go to a treatment facility that next day, the next morning. And so he was telling me how he was going to get there. I said, I tell you what, why don't you let me take you? And he agreed. And so I had to get up about 4 o'clock in the morning, drive all the way to where he was, pick him up, and drive. It was about an hour and a half trip, not the same place I went to, but close. About an hour and a half trip, and we drove all the way over there. And I remember when we took the exit to go to the facility off the interstate, he turned and looked at me. He said, is there any way we can stop and get a drink? Let me get a drink. And I said, I'd prefer not to, and let's just get you there. It's going to be all right. And I got him there, got him checked in, went to visit him several times through all that. Got him to about 4 years sober, and then he disappeared on me, and I haven't talked to him since. Matter of fact, Mike, you have met him.
I think I've actually, thinking back, I think I was at that meeting that Saturday night.
Yeah. Well, and he and I wandered into your place of employment.
I remember
one day.
that day I seen you guys in there.
Yep. And that was one of the visits that I'd gone over there to see him. But not long after that, and I can't exactly remember the order, I think Matt was next. Matt had been new to the program, and he asked me to sponsor him, and I agreed. And then not long after that, a guy that actually had been in the program for about a year but didn't have a sponsor, Cal, asked me to sponsor him, and I agreed to that. I learned a lot through that first few years. And, you know, in meetings when we're asked if anybody's willing to sponsor, please raise your hand. There's times I raise my hand, and there's times I don't raise my hand. And the reason is, for me personally, if I'm active working the steps with one person, that's all I need. I don't want to spread myself too thin. It's not fair to them. It's not fair to me. And that first couple of years was kind of a struggle because I had 3 fairly new guys I was active in the steps with, and one of them was living about an hour and a half away.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I was having to go over there. But I got through it. Still from time to time, even though I don't raise my hand, people ask me to sponsor them, and I'll either, you know, agree or not agree. Most of the time I tell them, look, let me be your temporary sponsor. And sometimes, I think I told Matt that, and here we are 5 years later.
Still
and
temporary,
he's
bro.
still my temporary sponsee. So
He's
Day
still
to
my
day.
temporary friend.
That's
It's day
right.
to day. That's how I live my whole life.
That's
It's
right.
temporary.
But-
We're on a temporary basis.
you know, working the program, I would love to sit here and say that I go to a meeting 7 days a week. I do not. I typically now try to take Saturday and Sunday off to spend time, you know, doing things I enjoy, which is family, church. Obviously, I like to fish a lot, and you know, yard work, things that you got to do in life to get by. But most of the other time, I try to be at the meeting we go to and be there as much as possible, and try to participate when I can. You know, we were talking a little bit before this. You know, things kind of got off track at the meeting tonight, and several of the people turned and looked at me like, handle this. And I was like, what do you want me to do? You know, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And
Nobody's in charge.
nobody's in charge. But after a while, I kind of interjected and got it back on course a little bit. And then it got back off course again. But can't do nothing about that. And, you know, it's not, everybody is not my sponsee. So I don't, you know, if they're not doing something I don't like, I just brush it off and move on down the road and let them deal with it. So.
Well, there's been. It's funny you said that about you know, you taking Saturday and Sunday off and you doing things, and I think we get, and everybody has their own way of doing it. There's no, you know, set in stone way. But I was early in sobriety. You may not even remember this, but telling me this, but I was doing, you know, going to a meeting every day, and I probably had less than a year. And I remember Landry, my son, started playing. I think he was playing football.
Yes.
And you called me one night and you said, hey, you didn't go to, where were you or something, you know? And I said, man, my son had a football tonight. I couldn't make it. And you said, do you remember what you told me? You said,
No.
That's the same as a meeting to me. If you're out there coaching your son, that's what we're here to do.
I didn't
And he
tell you
said,
to put a
"That's
rock
life."
in your pocket?
No, you didn't. That came later.
Oh, okay.
You know, it came later. That's one of those character defects I don't have. That
Matt
keeps
ever
coming
falls
up.
in the lake, he's sinking straight
I'm
to the bottom.
I'm
Straight to the
drowned.
bottom.
I'm
And
drowned.
you know, it's funny that you know, just because you don't go to a meeting, doesn't mean you're working AA. And I'll give this example, very real example, just happened. Sunday is kind of a big day for me. I typically get up, me and my wife go to church. We go and eat lunch. I'll take her to do the grocery shopping for the day. But I always have fishing on my mind.
Yeah.
You know, if I can get home in time, then I'm gonna go fishing. And this past Sunday was no different. We got everything done, and I told her that you know, I'm gonna get home. I got some yard work I need to do, and I got to do it. But you know, the kind of day it is, I want to be fishing before this day's out. And so got home, got everything unloaded. I walked out to my truck to do something, and my phone rang. And I looked down, and I didn't, you know, the name didn't pop up, but the place popped up of where they was calling from, and I knew that it was a guy in treatment. And so I answered the phone, and I talked to him for a little while and asked him how it was going and what all that, and we chit-chatted, and I ended that phone call, got my tools together to do my little bit of yard work, and as I'm getting ready to start that, I get a text, and I look down, and this guy asking me if I'm going to be at the meeting tonight on a Sunday night. Not a normal night I go. And I was like, if you need me to be there, I will be there. And he said, no, I was just checking to see if you were going to be there. And I said, okay. And this is a guy that just came out of treatment for about 90 days. And I think Sunday was his first day back. And so he kind of gave me a pass, and you know, being selfish, I took the pass and said, okay, well, if you don't need me there, I'm not coming. But you know how we are. We're not truthful. He probably really did need me there. And then no sooner than I got off the phone with him, I get this text from a guy I know. He was at the meeting tonight, and it was, I can't go on with this drinking. It's killing me. What do I do? And so I sat down on my front porch, and he and I had text exchange. I said, if you're ready to get serious, then, you know, you need to get to meetings and you need to start working the steps. And I told him, I said, I'll be there tomorrow night. You're going to be there. And he said he would. And so when Monday came, and I did end up going fishing Sunday evening, but when Monday came, I texted him. I said, you going to be there tonight? And he said, man, I'm not going to make it. I'm stuck in the bathroom, still sick from drinking and all that. But today is Tuesday, and he showed up tonight, and he picked up a Desire chip.
All right.
So
There you go.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. You
Yep.
know, my funny story, and I'll be real quick. We're about to shut it off. You know, you sponsor Matt. Matt talked on the podcast about carrying a rock, you know, and the purpose of carrying that rock. And
Sure.
the next day, I asked my daughter, will you just listen to my podcast? I need to see somebody listening to my podcast, you know. And a couple days later, she calls me and says, you know, I don't know about all that stuff. She's not an alcoholic, but she calls me and says, I don't know about all that stuff, but I really like the rock thing. I'm
Yeah.
going to really try that rock thing. So last question, and we can be brief or long, but how's life today, Bobby?
Life is good, and you know, I love life. I live life. I try not to let things aggravate me, you know, and really, it if you will, it goes back to that rock. And the way I got started on the rock was in the treatment center I was in. At the end of each meeting, they asked if anybody had a resentment, and if you had a resentment for anybody, anything, anyone, any corporation, anything, you needed to get up and get a resentment rock. And, you know, there was nothing special about those rocks. They were just the rocks that were out in the parking lot that they, you know, gathered up and brought in. And from time to time, I would go pick up one of those rocks. And I was taught in treatment that you get the rock, you pray for that situation, that person, whoever, for 2 weeks. And then when you're done, you throw the rock in the bayou that was right there and let it go. And that's how I came to that, of telling Matt, you know, he hates it when he's talking to me and I start looking around the parking lot for a rock. But there's one rock that I have never gotten rid of. It is still with me to this day. And it's about the size of maybe a ping pong ball. And it has 2 letters on it, M-E, me.
Yeah.
And that's because I still have a deep resentment against myself for all the damage I had done. And I keep that rock is always close somewhere. Sometimes it's in a drawer at work. Sometimes it's in a drawer at my house. Sometimes it's sitting on my nightstand, where just in the normal course of business, you know, I open that drawer and I look down and I see me on there, and I realize that I need to always be working on me. I can't work on other people, but life is good. You know, we talked about character defects today, and those, you know, they're like dryer sheets. You never know when they're going to pop up. You know, you put a shirt on, you're like, something's funny, and there's a dryer sheet hanging inside it.
Yeah. Feel
And
something
so-
under your arm.
That's right. And, you know, that, and I displayed it Sunday, was one of those character defects that I always have trouble with, is selfishness. And, you know, I wanted to go fishing, and I didn't want anything to interfere with that. And I was being selfish about that. And I, you know, I'm willing to give my character defects to God, and what that means to me is that when I'm in those defects, God lets me know that I'm in them. And so I can realize it's me, like it's on the rock, and not some external circumstance that's causing this problem, but it's all me. And then I can work on that character defect, you know, and you know, I felt bad and said a little prayer about being so selfish, you know, Sunday, but I took them at the word. But what I should have done was got up and gone to a meeting and been with a guy that was his first day out of treatment. That's what I should have done. Probably should have gone picked up the other guy and took him with me. But, you know, if you truly practice the program, if you want to, you can do this stuff 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
You know, there's plenty of us out there.
Yep. Well, you've definitely helped me, and that little story I told you about the practice, you know, it kind of shifted my focus to go, what are we doing all this for? Why are we at meetings all the time? Yeah, we want to help other people, but we want our families and people around us. You got a rock says ME. Well, there's a me over here too, and I've had a bunch of them that's had to put up with a lot of stuff, and they deserve a little better, you know, and that's why, you know, we do this stuff we do.
Well, and it's, you know, the me and the selfishness, you know, and you talking about the football game and all that. You know, one time I put my selfishness aside, and I believe I came to one of y'all's games, you know, and, you know, it wasn't anything other than to support you and support your kids and your nephews and things like that. And that's what the program is about, is giving up me and giving to others, so that they can find a path to sobriety.
Yep.
All
Well,
right.
I'm super grateful, and thank you for doing this. It's kind of a good one for me. I was glad to get you in here, and I know you say you're selfish, but I know you really didn't want to do this, but you did it anyway.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bobby.
When is the paycheck coming?
Mike handles that.
Okay.
I gotta go.
Yeah, wait till the
yeah,
accountant
I'm
delivers
out.
the royalties. So.
There you go.
Bobby, appreciate you coming by.
All right, my pleasure.
All right, good night.